and I don't have any products with us on the table, but we have a number of one that are based on the GABAergic system.
Well, this is a ZZZ.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, we have that, the Z, yeah. So the Tro-Z is a sleep aid that we created that leverages the GABA system, because like while we were looking at products to help our patients with the health optimization journey, we were looking at energy, number one, but we're also looking at parasympathetic activation, because most of us are just on all the time and don't know how to shut off. And that's because we're depleted in one of our the most important neurotransmitter for inhibition or decreasing firing, called GABA aminobutyric acid. And so GABA is 20% of our brain's neurotransmission, and nobody thinks about it because everybody thinks about norepinephrine and dopamine and serotonin. But glutamate is the excitatory neurotransmitter, that's the primary, and GABA is the inhibitory, and they're always in balance. And glutamate actually gets converted into GABA in the brain. So it's this fine balance between those two. And then if you're always overstimulated, you're always going to be depleting your GABA, and you're always going to have too much glutamate around as well, because you're depleting other things that help with the conversion of glutamate to GABA, like B6 and magnesium. So what we found is that when you're doing testing for people, you find it's really important to optimize, of course, your vitamins and minerals on all sides. But on the GABA side, glutamine is your precursor amino acid. So glutamine is something we get from our food, meat products typically, cabbage and sauerkraut too. And that glutamine is also the primary fuel of our gut. So if you have a leaky gut, you're not going to be getting a lot of glutamine in the system. It's mostly going to be taken away trying to heal the gut. But glutamine gets converted into glutamate, and then glutamate gets converted into GABA. So thinking about the precursor amino acid, vitamin B6 and magnesium help the conversion of glutamate to GABA. But we're GABA deficient for all these other reasons I was describing, because of stress, because of vitamin, mineral, nutrient deficiencies, because of toxins, blah, blah, blah. And so the problem is that repleting the GABA system is not straightforward. GABA supplements shouldn't work. If you take a GABA supplement and it works for you, it means that your blood-brain barrier is not doing what it was supposed to do.
Interesting.
A leaky brain. What that really means is that you likely have a leaky gut as well. That's causing inflammation and then causing your blood-brain barrier, which is supposed to keep things out, to allow things in. So GABA shouldn't get across, but if it does, it's actually almost diagnostic clinically that somebody has a leaky barrier that needs to be addressed. And so what we wanted to do was find a way to enhance the GABA system without using GABA directly, right? And so we did that using a couple of different compounds that are really interesting. One of them is called, in Tro-Z, is called Agarin. Agarin is from the fly agaric or the Amanita muscaria mushroom. Have you heard of that mushroom before?
I've heard of it, but I don't know anything about it.
So it's the one with the red cap and white spots, and it's psychedelic. It's thought to be maybe the reason for Christmas and Santa Claus and reindeer.
Like the Super Mario Brothers mushroom.
And Super Mario Bros. Exactly. And Alice in Wonderland. Exactly. You got it. So the mushroom itself, when it's raw, is toxic because it has something called ibotenic acid in it, which is neurotoxic. If it's dried, there's less of that in there. But the other ingredient is Agarin. And Agarin is a long-acting molecule that goes to the GABA receptor, binds where GABA would bind, and sticks on there for about 6.5 hours. So it's great for sleep because GABA is so important for sleep. If you're GABA deficient, by the way, you have a higher risk of having anxiety, insomnia, and depression, right? Because when you don't have enough GABA around, you can't sleep, but also your mind is racing because our thoughts very much are regulated by our GABA production. And so do you know how many thoughts we have per day? Fun fact. Any guesses?
A couple thousand?
70,000.
70,000?
Yeah.
Thoughts per day?
Yeah, that's why I say don't believe everything you think, right? So
how the hell do they quantify that?
It's interesting, right? I have no idea, but they've quantified this somehow, that about 70,000 thoughts per day. But when you're anxious and you're depressed, you have about 120,000 thoughts per day on average, right? So the idea is to get you back down to your baseline of 70,000 thoughts so that you can go to bed, right? And so having more GABA around helps regulate the information that's coming from out from the environment, because GABA has this cool mechanism or cool function of being what's called an interneuron. So it sticks between other neurons and helps regulate the flow of information. And that's why we don't get bludgeoned by information all the time. We have so many inputs, but GABA is kind of helping
it's inhibitory.
Yes, exactly. It's regulating that. Also, we don't get bludgeoned by all that because it's inhibitory. So the key for us was to use something that could bind to the GABA receptor where GABA binds, called Agarin. Then we have something else in there called hanakyle or hanokiol from magnolia bark, which you may have heard of before. And that's working on another site of the GABA receptor increasing the affinity for GABA to bind, or in this case, Agarin, because Agarin's around. So what we did differently here is that we've combined them together. Most supplements will just have something that binds to a separate site on the GABA receptor, increasing the affinity for GABA to bind. But the problem is if you don't have enough GABA around, like what's going to happen, right? It's not going to go well over time. So this is people that are taking kava for long periods of time, right? Or even things like, what's another good example? What's another good example?
Chamomile.
Chamomile has also got some GABA. There's another one that people, regardless, the kava is the big one that I can think of. Is that
valerian?
Yeah, valerian's another one, right? So valerian root is also working on the GABA receptor as well. But these are going to deplete GABA over time, even though they're not as severe as taking like a benzodiazepine, like Ativan or Xanax, which binds to these separate sites on the GABA receptor too, and then increases the affinity of GABA to bind so tightly that you get tolerance and withdrawal and dependence as a result of that. Alcohol, the same thing, binds super tightly to the GABA receptor at these separate sites, increasing GABA to bind, depleting your GABA as well. So supplements can do this, but not as significantly. But so what we did in Tro-Z and also Trocom, our other product that work on the GABA system, is that we have a combination of the two together. The combination is this one that's increasing affinity, that's the Hanakyle, and then the other one that's binding to where the GABA would bind itself, the Hanakyle itself. The Agarin. So
you guys have pretty high dose melatonin.
Yeah, that's 5 milligrams in that one. Yeah,
isn't that pretty high though?
So melatonin, physiologically, dosing is probably in the microgram dosing. However, with a lot of people as they're getting older, they do need more melatonin production, right? So I find that for this one, if you're already sensitive to melatonin, that you probably don't need a whole lot of the Tro-Z to make it work. It's really great as well if you're traveling a lot. The dosing of 5 milligrams is really quite good overall.
For jet lag.
For low jet lag and things like that. So I find that it's a great reset for people that are having a difficult time sleeping because it does help. But what I tend to do in clinical practice is I will use it, but I will try to wean people off of it so they're not using it all the time. Because there's a couple of things that people worry about with melatonin that I think are unfounded. One of them is that it's going to decrease your own melatonin production. There really is no evidence of that. So if you take exogenous melatonin or you take it by pill or whatever, it's not going to decrease your own production. That's number one. Number two, people worry about testosterone production here. They think that melatonin is going to decrease testosterone. There's really no evidence that that's the case either, actually.
I've never even heard that.
Yeah, it's another thing that's been around for a while. I have my colleagues in the cancer space that are using very high doses of melatonin because melatonin not only works to help you sleep, it also is a profound antioxidant. It's one of the most powerful antioxidants that we have. So we're using it in Tro-Z for that reason too. So melatonin, we think about it in the brain, but actually melatonin's the primary antioxidant in our mitochondria. And so we need melatonin production and we need extra support when we have mitochondrial dysfunction too.
It's super interesting.
Yeah.
I want to go back to methylene blue. Isn't there an interesting synergistic relationship between methylene blue and photobiomodulation, like red light exposure? There
is, yeah. So near-infrared light, specifically around 680 nanometers, has been shown to donate electrons or rev up energy production by donating photons specifically, to complex 4 of the mitochondria. And so what methylene blue can do as well is donate electrons directly to the same location. So they are synergistic in that capacity. So if you take some methylene blue and go out in the sunlight, you're going to see and feel a significant rise in energy as a result of that.
Interesting.
Now, that's at low doses. At high doses, what near-infrared light or what methylene blue is actually a photosensitizer. So it's being used in cancer treatment now and an infection as what's called a photosensitizer, which means you can use methylene blue on board while you give high strength and high directed near-infrared light for things like breast cancer. Actually, some interesting studies on breast cancer using methylene blue as a photosensitizer. So, and it's also been studied there's a great paper that used methylene blue at high doses with sunlight or like sunlight exposure for COVID infection actually as well. So we know that it's an anti-infective at these high doses and also can be potentially anti-cancer as well, which is pretty interesting. Yeah.
Can it make you more prone to sunburn?
Not that I'm aware of. No, I don't think it would have a mechanism in that capacity. I think one, it's kind of a funny story for me. Like you can potentially overheat. So be careful because funny story. I was taking a walk in 105-degree heat here in California, actually, and with a friend, and I had taken methylene blue earlier in the day, and I was drinking water, but I was trying to figure out like why I was overheating, and I didn't know why. And when we got back to his house, I had to like cover myself in ice packs because I was on the verge of heat stroke, and I was like, what did I do differently? And I was like, oh, it was the methylene blue. So because it was providing me so much energy and making like that synergistic heat that was, you know, the byproduct of energy production, I was getting, you know, overheated as a result. So just be aware of that, I guess. Like if in very, very hot weather, potentially that could happen. So
damn, very interesting.
I had all these like ice packs. It was a good picture. It was kind of fun. Yeah.
When I was a kid, like in high school, I was reading about, for whatever reason. Well, actually, I know why. I grew up in New York City, and I was prone to seasonal affective disorder.
Yeah.
Just the winters and whatever.
It could be rough. Yeah. I grew up on Long Island, so I know. Yeah. We had more sun than the city, I think, though. Yeah.
In Long Island, for sure. Because I mean, the city, what little sun there is like blocked out by the buildings.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would notice every winter my mood would get so dour that I began looking up natural antidepressants, and I stumbled upon the research on St. John's wort.
Yeah.
And so I went to my local like GNC at the time, and I picked up a bottle of St. John's wort, and I was actually taking it for quite some time. And I remember that it very well could have been a placebo, but I did notice that it boosted my mood. But then I found out the hard way that one of the side effects of St. John's wort is that it's a photosensitizer. And if you're taking St. John's wort and you're already prone to burning in the sun, and then you go out and you spend like, you know, an excessive, stupid amount of time in the sun, it can like really damage your skin.
Okay.
So I went on vacation one week with my parents, my family, and I got really badly sunburned to the point that I had like scabs on my face.
Oh no! Okay.
Yeah, it was really bad.
Yeah, that can happen with some of the antibiotics that cause photosensitization, but
wild.
But it's not, methylene blue doesn't do that overall, so you don't have to worry about that. But you do have to think about if you're in the sun for a long period of time, you're going to make a lot more energy. And I didn't realize that's what I was doing. And that's why I had to decrease my core body temperature pretty quickly so I didn't have to take myself to the ER. So
crazy shit.
Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.